as I say, to bring up or refresh your whole determination to carve out a better life for yourself and others in the future, and to live life at its highest potential. So the first prayer of Gongyo, and forgive me those of you who know this all too well, but I think we should go through it very briefly. The first prayer concerns the forces of the universe, or the Shoten Zenjin, or Buddhist gods, the myriad forces that are at work in the universe, and which can either work with us, protecting us, or ignoring us, depending upon how positive or negative our life state is. So the purpose of the first prayer is to refresh one's gratitude for the protection that one's had up to the present, and to determine to practice strongly again in order to continue that protection in the future, and in the process, if you like, feed those forces that are created by the very rhythm of life in order to produce a valuable and happy world. So through our effort to be in rhythm with them, we are feeding them. If we don't feed them, they can leave us and leave our environment. So that is the purpose of the first prayer. And just a few sample Shoten Zenjin, or forces, are mentioned. Bonten and Taishaku, who represent the forces that work in other people to help us. The bank manager, who will give you a loan if it's for your happiness, but will not give you a loan if it's for your unhappiness. That is a Shoten Zenjin, a force of the universe working within another person. Of course, there are many different forms of that. And then it mentions the sun and the moon and the stars, all of which are forces outside, beyond this planet, in the universe itself, which have a direct effect on our life here. And the second prayer, again, its concern is with gratitude, gives the 10 virtues of the Daigonzen, the original Gonzen inscribed by Nichiren Daishonin at the head temple Taiseki. So this is an expression of gratitude for the power of this Daigonzen working in one's life for benefit of yourself and others. It would be a whole lecture again in itself to tell you or explain all those 10 virtues. They're difficult to understand to begin with, but the more you study, the more you practice and get experience of the workings of the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in your life, the more you understand each one of them. Then the third prayer, again concerned with gratitude, is a series of thank yous to all the people who have brought you the Gohonzen and brought you Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, who have opened your eyes to the law of life, or the ultimate truth, starting with Nichiren Daishonin, and going on from there to Nikko, who succeeded him, and Nichimoku, and all the other high priests who over centuries have protected the law and the teachings against all odds, down, if you like, when you're doing your Nam-myoho Renge-kyo at the end of that prayer, the people who brought the Gonzen to you, the person who shakabukuju. And also, in the last part of that third prayer, there is mention of the purity of the teachings. So it's good to think at that time, or to concentrate one's life on the point that one should never, never distort the teachings, to ask for the wisdom to always keep them intact and pure, and pass them on to the next person accordingly. Then the fourth prayer is determination. first three are gratitude and recognition. Fourth prayer is determination to work for one's own human revolution, to overcome one's unhappy karma and to elevate one's life state so that you can create a more peaceful world and rid yourself of the destructive elements in life which could otherwise cause unhappiness and chaos. And also for the whole movement of world peace, or Kosen Rufu, that we can teach others so that they in turn can do their human revolution. And finally, in the fifth prayer, we remember the people who have died and who had some particular connection with us. This is very important. We send concentrated prayer and daimoku to those who are deceased, especially family, who have a very close life link to us. Through that, we keep the life link between us and them open, and we purify it every time we do it. And our prayer and daimoku for them helps to project them on through the state of death to a new life, and indeed can elevate their life state. So those are the 5 prayers, all too briefly. But as you can see, each one has tremendous meaning. And then finally, having done those 5 prayers in the morning, or 3 of them in the evening, you start to chant daimoku. So perhaps someone's already thinking, why is it only 5 in the morning and 3 in the evening? The answer to that is that the first prayer, which is for the Buddhist gods, the protective forces, should be at the dawn of the day. I'm afraid some of us don't always get up at the dawn of the day, but that is the reason behind it. As the sun rises and the forces of the universe begin to work through another day, so we should put our life into rhythm with them. And then the fourth prayer concerns one's human revolution. That is a prayer which should take you through the whole of that day. That is one's determination for the day, not for the evening. Though admittedly, of course, we do activities and so on in the evening. But that, I think, is the reasoning behind that. Also, perhaps, in the evening time, we are already been through a day. We've already done morning Gongyo. Therefore, the practice no need to be quite so assiduous as it is first thing in the morning. So daimoku, I've already mentioned the 3 acts of body, mouth and heart. Of course, these apply to chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It should be firm and clear and resonant to be really effective. Kyo of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is sound or communication. If I was talking to a little voice like this, I'd have very little impact on what, your ears really, wouldn't I? On the other hand, if I was shouting like this, you'd get fed up to the back teeth in no time. So it should be firm and clear. A firm voice can be no need to have enormous volume. It should be very firm and concise. And it should hit the gonzan and then come back to you. So you don't chant daimoku to the leader. You chant daimoku, or you recite the sutra to the gonzan. Your connection direct with the gonzan. So in your daimoku, as you say the words Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is, remember, the essence of life and the rhythm of the universe, you are then expressing your prayers, your wishes. So those prayers and wishes are going out in absolute balance and rhythm with the universal force of life itself, and going back into you also in that same rhythm of your life in its best possible state. So this is why they have such a powerful effect. So in the guidance on prayer, of course the way you pray is up to you. But it's been pointed out both by Nichiren Daishonin and by those who have followed him, that first and foremost you should pray for the weak points in one's own life, the things that you want to change in order to become a stronger and more valuable and therefore happier person. And then you should pray for Kosen Rufu. That is to say, prayers not for yourself, but others. And strictly speaking, all prayers for Kosen Rufu, for the happiness of others, for the peace of the world, for the growth of the number of people who meet the Gohonzon and so on, these are all prayers for Kosen Rufu. And they will bring you, strictly speaking, everything you need for your happiness. But being human, we can't help but sometimes concentrate our mind on our own personal difficulties or obstacles. And this is quite reasonable to do so. But it shouldn't absorb one's whole mind. Many times recently, I've felt I had to point this out. People become too absorbed with their own particular problem, their own particular difficulty. But like all things, if you become absorbed by it, then it becomes magnified in your mind and seems impossible to overcome. But if you're really practicing as the Buddha taught, that is to say, practice for yourself and practice for others, then your problem, whatever it may be, will take its right shape and size in your mind, and you'll find it remarkably easy to overcome. So this is an important point. We practice Jigyo and Keita in Japanese words. This Buddhism is practice for yourself and practice for others. If you neglect others and become absorbed with yourself, you'll get a form of indigestion or stagnation, because your problem will become vast in your mind. Whereas in fact, it's really only that size in relation to the power of the Gonzo. So this is a very important point in the balance of the practice. How much should one chant? There is no real answer to that. Nichiren Daishonin said several things about it. First, as I said at the beginning, he said, chant to your heart's content. So what is one's heart's content? It's chanting until you feel, really, I've chanted enough about that. So now I'll stop, or perhaps you feel you want to go on and chant about something else. But it's a feeling in your own life. Have I chanted enough about this, honestly? Yes, you have. Okay, that's enough. Or, no, you haven't. Okay, I'll go on for another 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Chanting to your heart's content. The second point he said was that there are times when one daimoku, meaning one Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, is enough. And yet, there are times when 10,000 is not enough. In other words, it depends on so many things. Your state of life when you began to chant, if you were chanting without doing Gongyo, the hugeness of the problem or the depths of the particular aspect of karma that you want to change. So many different factors. Each one of us is different. President Keita once said there's absolutely no point whatsoever in one person telling another how much daimoku he chants or she chants. How much you should chant is quite different to how much you should chant. But speaking as a general sort of guideline, it's always been said that really, if you take an average person, you need to chant about 3,000 daimoku a day. That is a steady flow every day of about 45 minutes to 1 hour's daimoku. That is ideal. If you can keep that going consistently, year in, year out, that's much better than doing 10 minutes one day, nothing the next day, and 10 hours at the weekend. That isn't a steady rhythm. Nichiren Daishonin said practice should be like flowing water. So that steady rhythm of practice is the most important thing of all, for all the reasons that I've been talking about ever since I began to speak this afternoon or this evening. So there is no rule how much daimoku we should chant. We should chant to our heart's content. In other words, as we chant and we feel, oh, I'm going to stop now, you should say in your mind, have I chanted enough? And listen to what your wisdom tells you, because your wisdom's really flowing at that time. And furthermore, you should chant until you feel joy rising up in your life. There's no point in stopping chanting daimoku in the middle of struggling with some problem that's worrying you. When you've given your problem, or whatever it is, to your prayers, to your daimoku and to the gonzen, then go on a bit longer, just listening to your voice, chanting the Buddha's life or the Buddha's wisdom of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo over and over again to the gonzen, with your mind just on the words and on the gonzen, or if you haven't got a gonzen yet, to the sound. Then really you'll find joy rising up in your life. But if you stop in the middle of still worrying about some problem, of course you won't. You've got to give your problems to your prayers, to your daimoku. And then, before you finally stop, just go on a little bit longer. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 minutes. And you'll feel so different at the end of it. Chant until you feel joy rising up in your life. So really, the daimoku, as you can see, is the final, if you like, triumphant act of an amazing ceremony, which the more you do it, the more you feel its significance in your life. In the Gosho Nichiren Daishonin said, when you bow to the mirror, the image in the mirror bows to you. The mirror he's referring to is the gonzen, the mirror which reflects your Buddha state. When you bow to the mirror, the image in the mirror bows to you. The Buddha state in your life will be working with you through the mirror of the Buddha state inscribed on the gonzen. So this practice of Gongyo affects you yourself, activating the Buddha state, making your wisdom and compassion flow. And at the same time, through Kyo of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, it goes out to your environment and affects the Buddha state in every single thing in your entire environment and beyond even to the whole universe. So of course, it's difficult to believe, but more and more you do it, you prove it. So our attitude in Gongyo should be strong and vigorous and upright. We have to make effort from the moment we begin. Our whole life state will reflect the way we do Gongyo. Of course, if you miss Gongyo one morning, don't feel guilty. Okay, I missed it. I'll do a greater one tomorrow morning. Or if you find yourself getting into the habit of missing Gongyo, then I recommend you make up your mind to do it wherever you can at some point during the day. But above all, don't feel guilty about it. You've missed it. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't bring that time back. So take it in your stride and determine to do a better one the next day. Or, as I say, if it's becoming a habit, then make up your mind you're going to do it anywhere, somewhere during the day. So one time during my practice, I found myself going through such a period. For months and months I was battling with it, to change this aspect of my karma that was making it difficult for me to get up in time in the morning. And I was doing Gongyo in car parks and offices and even once or twice in the loo and so on. But I was determined to bust this karma that was making me so unhappy. And it did. Through that cause of making effort to do it, in the end my life stabilized and I changed that thing in my life which was causing me so much disruption and unhappiness. So I think I've said enough. I don't want to say more, otherwise you'll get confused. So I'll just end with one more quotation from the Gosho, from a Gosho called Honin Myosho. And it says this: "The common mortal himself is the Buddha when he devotes his life to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo by chanting with strong faith. He attains enlightenment or Buddhahood in this world without discarding his life as a common mortal." The purpose of the practice of Gongyo, as instructed or taught by the Buddha of this age, Nichiren Daishonin, is to achieve Buddhahood, exactly as he says in this line, without discarding our lives as a common mortal. Thanks very much indeed for listening. Many thanks. I think that if you're on your own, yes, I think it is good to stop, go back and go over it again. I don't mean go over the whole thing again, but just that bit that you know you mispronounced. But obviously if you're with other people, that's difficult. But the ultimate aim, of course, is to get yourself to do it word perfect. Okay. Any other questions? No? All clear? I mean, yes, you should be precise. I mean, it's quite true that you hear people not being precise. But you should be precise. I mean, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo should be very clear. Even though it's fast, it should be clear. Because that, is the essence of life. If you want to put yourself to make use of that, to express your own life as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, it must be clear and precise, mustn't it? Otherwise it becomes slovenly or lazy or whatever, or slack. So it should be clear. It's quite true, when you hear a lot of people chanting together, it sounds like a blur, but actually it's probably not so. It's merely because there's a small difference, a moment's difference between everyone's voice. But in fact it should be very clear. Yes?
How do you avoid the danger of
Well, I think that you can detect that, really. You become very perceptive about yourself through doing Gongyo. I mean, if you do become absorbed with the beauty of your own voice, something is going to say to you, hey, you're becoming absorbed with yourself and you've forgotten completely about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Gonzon and so on. You'll find, something will correct you. That's right. Any other questions? But one's voice should, as far as, and obviously you want your voice to sound good, going by that act of body, mouth and heart. You obviously, if you're giving your voice to the Buddha or to the highest state of life, it should be as nice as you could make it. But I mean, we all have different sorts of voices. Anything else? Good. Yes. Oh, that's a really good, it's a good question though. Thank you for asking. I really meant to mention it. People get worried sometimes because their mind wanders, especially when they're reciting the sutra over and over again. That doesn't matter in the when you're reciting the sutra. The sutra is an exercise. Therefore, if your mind wanders, it doesn't strictly speaking matter, though, of course, quite naturally you wish to concentrate more and more with your mind on the words or on the meaning of the sutra or on the Gohonzon. That is something that grows in you. But it's not prayer, it's an exercise, so it doesn't matter so much. But it does matter a lot in the silent prayers. The silent prayers, you're concentrating your whole life in a particular act of expressing gratitude or determination or whatever. So if your mind wanders there, of course, whatever it wanders to becomes the meaning of that prayer, doesn't it? So, I mean, if, you're concentrating on your determination to teach others, say, about Buddhism, and your mind's wandering off, onto, I don't know, your breakfast or bacon and eggs or something or other, then your prayer's about bacon and eggs. So it does matter in the silent prayers. And in Daimoku, in any case, the power of Daimoku is so great when you're doing it that you will find that you wish to concentrate your mind. The Daimoku is bringing with it so much life force and wisdom and compassion that you'll be very perceptive if your mind, just goes off and becomes a sort of bit of cotton wool. And you'll want to bring it back onto whatever it is you need. In other words, you won't want to waste that Daimoku. Does that answer it for you? Thanks very much for mentioning that. Anything else? Yes? Yes. No, well, both of them are. The Hoben chapter, which is theory, the theory of life and the existence of Buddha state in it, we're expressing our praise or gratitude for the wisdom of the Buddhas in explaining that, and also our expectancy that we can bring out the Buddha state in our own life. And the Juryo chapter is Shakyamuni's only experience of Buddhahood. So in that case, we are again praising his experience and Nichiren Daishonin's experience of Buddhahood, which enabled him to create the Gohonzon, in the expectation, of course, of becoming or attaining Buddhahood ourselves. All right, Pat. Good. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much for patiently listening. Many thanks. Good night. Thank you.